Today, more than ever, a whisper begins to stir, challenging what so many are taught to believe. For countless women, the stillness of their body, its lack of external connection or pursuit of immediate pleasure, is branded as a mark of absence, a gaping emptiness, or even a profound emotional failing. But what if this widespread belief is a grand illusion, a profound misunderstanding of the soul's deepest journey? What if this very stillness, this apparent quietude, isn't a void at all, but the soul's first, most powerful awakening? As one who has long observed the intricate tapestry of human experience, I tell you, my dear friends, when a woman consciously, or sometimes unknowingly, begins to withdraw from the endless games of fleeting desire and the deceptive comfort of superficial affections, something far more ancient and powerful stirs within her depths. This is not an absence, but an intensifying presence, not a lack, but a grand expansion of self. Indeed, as Carl Jung wisely noted, all repressed energy finds new pathways to manifest. And when the body is no longer pulled by the ceaseless clamour for immediate pleasure, the soul is finally granted the sacred space it needs to truly speak, to unveil its timeless wisdom. Have you ever paused to ponder why so many women, after periods of intentional stillness or abstinence, speak of an unexpected spiritual awakening? They describe a heightened sensitivity to the world, dreams that surge with vivid meaning, intuitions that pierce through illusion with crystal clarity. This is no mere coincidence. It is a profound calling, a divine summons from within. With external touch momentarily set aside, the body naturally turns its focus inward, embarking on a deep, solitary expedition. And it is precisely in that long-forgotten inner territory, that sacred interior landscape, that a woman begins to rediscover aspects of herself she never knew existed, facets unseen by herself, and certainly by anyone else. This profound shift, you see, isn't simply about celibacy in the narrow sense. It's about a sacred transmutation, an alchemical process where vital energy ceases its outward quest for what can only be nurtured and grown from within. Society, entangled in its ceaseless cycle of seeking external validation and constant sexual affirmation, fears the woman who withdraws. Why? Because she becomes unpredictable, a mysterious force, untamed, and to some, even untouchable. More unsettling still, she begins to truly see beyond the superficial games, beyond tired emotional patterns, beyond the stifling masks of relationships that imprison far more than they liberate. Jung would describe this as a potent encounter with one's own shadow, a pivotal moment where a woman stops endlessly seeking to be chosen and begins with sovereign power to choose for herself. Her intention shifts from loving in order to be loved, to loving herself with such an unyielding intensity that everything shallow and inauthentic simply dissolves away. This kind of stillness is not an emptiness, it is a profound, sacred temple. And when the body quiets, it is often because the soul is about to ignite a light, a radiant, unsettling brilliance that challenges all assumptions. A woman living without sex or conventional relationships is not, by any measure, dead inside. She may be more vibrantly, profoundly alive than ever before. What appears as absence to the external world is, in truth, an overflowing abundance of inner presence. What seems like loneliness is actually a deep, resonant communion with something so profound that no fleeting passion could ever hope to touch it. It is in this hallowed space that the archetype of the wild woman awakens, reconnecting her to an ancient, ancestral wisdom, her pure, unbridled instinct, a powerful femininity that needs no audience, no external validation, to simply be. Can you feel it stirring within you? This powerful calling is not for everyone. It is for those who are weary, exhausted by the continuous trade of their very essence for fleeting moments of superficial connection. It is for those who deep down understand that what they truly seek is not found in anyone else's embrace, but in a radical, unwavering encounter with their own true self. And if these words have resonated with you, if you have journeyed with me this far, perhaps you are closer to embarking on that magnificent journey than you realize. Yes, the body may fall silent, but this is not weakness, it is strength, wisely retreating to gather itself, to coalesce into undeniable power. And when the soul finally begins to speak, truly speak, there is simply no turning back. For a woman who has genuinely heard the whisper of her own soul will never again be content with the low, muted volume of an ordinary, uninspired love. There arrives a singular, transformative moment in every woman's life when the incessant clamor of the world becomes unbearable. Not merely the external din, but the subtle, relentless inner murmur of expectations that are not her own, of desires she was subtly taught to feel, of affections imposed upon her as absolute, unassailable truths. It is in that profound weariness, that deep exhaustion, often invisible to those around her, that the sacred journey back to her authentic self truly begins. Carl Jung, a brilliant observer of the human psyche, posited that everything we deny within ourselves inevitably returns to us as destiny, and perhaps, my dear seeker, that is precisely why, when the body consciously chooses silence, it is not a sign of failure or an ending. Instead, it is a potent indication that something far greater, something truly divine, is striving with all its might to emerge. The woman who slowly, cautiously begins to withdraw from the familiar impulses that once guided her, often without fully understanding the deeper why of it, is already attuned to a silent, ancient calling that emanates not from the physical flesh, but from the eternal soul itself. That woman, even if unconsciously at first, begins to feel a longing that has no earthly name. It is not a nostalgia for a man, a particular touch, or a passionate night. No. It is a profound nostalgia for herself, for a sacred inner home she has not yet fully reached, but intuitively knows, beyond all doubt, exists. In this profound context, abstinence is not a punishment, nor a deprivation. It is, unequivocally, a portal, and by daring to cross its threshold, she initiates what Jung termed the process of individuation, a radical, singular path toward profound wholeness, where she courageously leaves behind the myriad projections she once cast onto others, finally able to recognize and reclaim her own radiant self. The seeming emptiness that initially appears is not an absence, but a sacred, fertile space being meticulously prepared for the birth of something far more authentic, far more true to her essence. It is within that hallowed, newly cleared space that old memories begin to resurface and ache in a profoundly different way, not as raw, festering wounds, but as crucial clues guiding her through a much grander, unfolding story. The relationships that have passed, the nights that dissolved into tears, the inexplicable cycles that repeated without resolution, all of these experiences suddenly begin to coalesce, making profound sense under a transformative new light. Because the woman who now courageously embraces silence is not retreating from life. She is actively and powerfully rewriting her very own story from an entirely new, elevated perspective. Her inner self, her true self, begins to observe her emotions not as overwhelming forces, but as symbolic mirrors reflecting an unconscious realm that had always communicated with her, but whose subtle voice was once drowned out by the deafening clamor of desire and external validation. Gradually, inexorably, she unearths a profound truth. She no longer requires external applause or endless affirmations. Her inherent worth, she realizes, is not measured by the superficiality of how much others may desire her body, but by how deeply and steadfastly she can hold the sacred presence of her own soul in profound, abiding silence. At this pivotal juncture, a nearly mystical force is truly born, the undeniable, unyielding power of the woman who no longer needs to be chosen by anyone outside herself. And it is precisely here, my friends, that the world often begins to fear her. Why? Because it simply doesn't comprehend what to do with a being who has utterly ceased begging for love, for validation, for a place at the table. She has become whole, complete unto herself, and thus inherently dangerous to everything that still clings desperately to living in fragmented halves. When this woman begins to consciously realize that her vital energy is not dormant or lost, but merely gathered, consolidated, and held in reserve, she truly enters a new, profound state of consciousness. It is a state characterized by an absence of frantic urgency, a complete liberation from the need to constantly prove her worth. For the silence of the body, you see, is not a punishment. It is a profound, eloquent language, and that sacred language can only be understood by those brave enough to dive into and inhabit their own boundless depths. Jung would call this a powerful reconciliation with the feminine unconscious, a vibrant reconnection with ancient primordial symbols that have been buried under centuries of societal repression. And this profound reconciliation does not unfold through empty words, but through the transformative power of unwavering presence. This awakened woman, my dear listeners, is only just beginning to truly emerge. But the path, my dear one, is far from gentle. As she distances herself from the immediate gratification of desire, from familiar physical contact, from the comforting, often superficial presence of another body beside hers, a profound unease sets in, an invisible anguish that, like a silent fire, consumes from within. She also finds herself distancing from everything that once made her feel she belonged. everything that affirmed her place in the world, and what initially remains is a brutal, unyielding discomfort, as if the external world no longer recognizes her existence, as if her courageous absence from the ceaseless game of desire has rendered her utterly invisible. This, as Jung astutely observed, is the raw beginning of the encounter with her shadow self, that vast, repressed part of herself that, for years, lived in quiet adaptation, always thirsting for validation, but which now, having tasted liberation, defiantly refuses to continue pretending. At this crossroads, she may begin to question everything. Was I wrong to withdraw? Am I losing my mind? Am I simply wasting my precious time, my youth, my opportunities? Because society, with its relentless voice, screams that a woman's time is tragically short, that she must constantly be in motion, conquering, being desired, relentlessly fulfilling expectations, and suddenly she simply no longer fits anywhere. She is no longer just the lover, the wife, the muse, or the girlfriend. She is simply and profoundly herself, and in that raw authenticity there is a pain sharper, more piercing than any abandonment. The abstinence now begins to feel less like a sacred choice and more like a cruel punishment. Yet, I assure you, it is not. It is a profound test, a symbolic journey of immense weight that only souls truly prepared for it can endure. Temptations will surely arise, old patterns will knock insistently at her door, easy invitations to familiar comforts will reappear, as if the entire world is conspiring to test her newfound resolve. The cruelest part, perhaps, is that no one around her truly comprehends what is unfolding. Friends question her motives, family gently suggests she go out more, that she not isolate herself. But it is not isolation they witness, it is deep, transformative immersion. And not everyone is equipped or willing to bear witness to someone diving so profoundly into their own depths, while the rest of the world continues to idly float upon the surface. Jung saw this as an essential, inevitable stage of individuation, that very moment when the ego, our familiar self, experiences sheer panic, feeling its control slipping away as the deeper soul, subtly yet powerfully, begins to assume its rightful lead. It is in this profound, silent despair that many falter, succumbing to the temptation to return to old, comfortable patterns, settling for lukewarm affections, desperately convincing themselves that even something is undeniably better than nothing at all. Yet, the woman who bravely persists, even through wrenching tears and debilitating doubt, is being exquisitely shaped by a force far grander than her individual self. She is being called to courageously break the cycle, and true cycles, my friends, are never broken by brute force. They are broken by the unwavering power of awareness. The immense tension she feels is not a signal of error, but an undeniable sign of a profound transition. Remember the cocoon, how it tightens and constricts just before the magnificent butterfly can finally emerge. This is precisely what is happening within her. A new being, a wholly transformed self, is being exquisitely gestated in the profound, sacred darkness of silence. Deep down, she knows this truth, even if she cannot articulate it, even if she fears she is too alone, too profoundly misunderstood, too deep for anyone else to truly grasp. There is a quiet, persistent voice within her that does not shout, but insists, a profound presence that does not always reveal itself fully, yet unerringly accompanies her every step. And that sacred presence, my dear seeker, is the powerful symbol of the archetypal feminine, the anima that Jung so eloquently described as the mystical bridge connecting consciousness and the great mystery of the universe. It is with this profound feminine essence that the woman begins a deep, transformative inner conversation. And the deeper that sacred internal dialogue flourishes, the more profound her understanding becomes. Her body, she realizes with stunning clarity, is not merely on pause, it is engaged in a profound ancient ritual, a ritual that the hurried modern world has tragically forgotten, but one her eternal soul has always known how to navigate. And then, a subtle shift begins, almost imperceptibly at first. A magnificent new understanding begins to bloom within her. What once manifested as mere restlessness now crystallizes into much deeper, more penetrating questions. Why have I always believed I needed to feel desired in order to truly feel alive? Why does the absence of another's touch or presence feel so utterly unbearable? What lingering part of me still depends on the gaze of others to truly exist? Because the woman who now holds steadfast in silence is not withdrawing from the richness of life. She is, with deliberate grace and strength, rewriting her own magnificent story from a completely fresh, powerful vantage point. Her innermost self begins to observe her surging emotions as if they were powerful symbolic mirrors, reflecting an unconscious wisdom that had always spoken to her, yet whose voice was once drowned out by the incessant, distracting noise of desire. Slowly, steadily, she uncovers the liberating truth. She no longer needs external applause or the fickle affirmations of others. Her inherent worth, she understands deeply, is not measured by how much her physical form is desired, but by the profound depth with which she can sustain the unwavering presence of her own radiant soul in sacred silence. At this extraordinary point, an almost mystical force, truly potent, is born within her, the undeniable power of the woman who no longer needs to be chosen by anyone outside herself. And it is precisely then, dear friends, that the world, with its frantic superficiality, truly begins to fear her. Why? Because it simply does not know what to do with someone who has ceased begging for love, for attention, for acceptance. She has become undeniably whole, complete unto herself, and therefore poses a formidable challenge to everything that still clings desperately to living in halves. As this woman begins to consciously recognize that her vital energy is not dormant or depleted, but rather carefully gathered and fiercely protected, she enters a magnificent new state of consciousness. It is a state where urgency has dissolved, where there is no longer any burning need to prove anything to anyone. For the silence of the body, as I have shared, is not a punishment, but a profound, resonant language, and that sacred language can only be fully comprehended by those courageous enough to truly inhabit their own immeasurable depths. Jung, with his profound insights, would describe this as a powerful reconciliation with the feminine unconscious, a deep, restorative reconnection with ancient symbols long buried beneath centuries of societal repression. This profound reconciliation, I assure you, does not unfold through mere words, but through the profound, unwavering power of presence itself, and that woman, dear seeker, is only just beginning to truly emerge. Yet the journey ahead is far from gentle. A profound restlessness often settles in, an unseen anguish that subtly but relentlessly eats away from within. When a woman begins to carefully distance herself from immediate desire, from familiar physical contact, from the comforting, habitual presence of another body beside hers, she simultaneously distances herself from everything that once made her feel she belonged, that offered her a fragile sense of identity. What initially remains is a brutal, visceral discomfort, as if the world itself no longer recognizes her existence, as if her courageous absence from the familiar games of desire has rendered her utterly invisible. This, Jung would confirm, is the true commencement of her encounter with her own shadow, that part of herself she had long repressed, that lived in constant adaptation, perpetually thirsty for external validation, but which now, having tasted the potent wine of self-discovery, steadfastly refuses to continue pretending. At this challenging point, she may question her decision to withdraw. Have I made a grave mistake? Am I truly going insane? Am I wasting my precious time, my fleeting youth, my valuable opportunities? Because society, with its relentless, urgent clamor, screams that a woman's time is agonizingly short, that she must always be in relentless motion, conquering, being desired, perpetually fulfilling endless expectations. And suddenly, she finds she belongs nowhere in that defined societal framework. She is no longer just the lover, the wife, the muse, or the fiancée. She is, simply and profoundly, herself. And this raw, unvarnished self-acceptance, though ultimately liberating, hurts more deeply than any abandonment she has ever known. This period of abstinence now begins to feel, deceptively, like a cruel punishment. But I assure you, it is not. It is a profound test, a symbolic journey of initiation that only the most prepared souls can truly endure. Temptations, potent and insistent, will surely arise. Old familiar patterns will knock relentlessly at her door. Easy, alluring invitations will reappear, seemingly designed to test her newfound resolve. The most challenging aspect of this phase is often the isolation. No one around her truly understands what profound transformation is happening within. Friends question her. Family suggests she socialize more, that she not lock herself away. But this is not seclusion. It is deep, essential immersion, and not everyone is prepared or willing to witness someone bravely diving to such depths while the rest of the world merely skims the surface. Jung observed this as an absolutely inevitable phase of individuation, the powerful moment when the ego, our conscious identity, experiences a profound panic because it perceives it is losing its accustomed control, and the deep guiding soul, subtly yet powerfully, begins to take command. It is within that very silent despair that many, alas, give up, retreating back to their old, comfortable patterns, accepting lukewarm love, tragically convincing themselves that having something is always preferable to having nothing. But the courageous woman who persists, my dear ones, even through the deluge of tears and the heavy shroud of doubt, is being profoundly shaped by something far greater and more ancient than herself. She is being unequivocally summoned to break the cycle. And cycles, I reveal to you, are never truly broken by force alone. They are broken by the illuminating power of awareness. The immense tension she feels is not, in fact, a sign of error, but a powerful indicator of a profound transition. Recall how the cocoon must tighten, must constrict, before the magnificent butterfly can finally be born. This is precisely what is unfolding within her. A glorious new being is being quietly, fiercely gestated in the profound, sacred darkness of her silence. Deep down, she knows this truth, even if she struggles to articulate it, even if she fears she is too solitary, too profoundly misunderstood, too deep for others to grasp. There is a gentle voice within that does not shout, but insists. A profound presence that does not always physically manifest, yet unerringly accompanies her. And that powerful presence, I tell you, is the sacred symbol of the archetypal feminine, the anima that Jung so eloquently described as the luminous bridge connecting human consciousness to the vast, encompassing mystery of existence. It is with this potent inner guide that the woman begins a profound, life-altering conversation, and the deeper that sacred internal dialogue blossoms, the more expansive and clearer her understanding becomes. Her body, she realizes with stunning clarity, is not merely on pause, it is engaged in a profound, ancient ritual. A ritual long forgotten by the modern world, yet one her eternal soul has always known how to perform. And then, subtly, almost imperceptibly, something magnificent shifts. A new, luminous understanding begins to bloom within her very being. What once was chaotic restlessness now beautifully organizes itself into deeper, more penetrating questions. Why have I always believed I needed to feel desired in order to truly feel alive? Why does the absence of another's presence feel so utterly unbearable to me? What part of me still desperately feeds on another's gaze simply to exist? But this newly transformed woman, I reveal to you, no longer accepts relationships as a mere anesthesia for loneliness. She no longer trades genuine affection for superficial company. And even if this radical honesty costs her long, silent nights, she knows, deep within, that her body is not experiencing deprivation or abstinence. It is profoundly in a state of sacred protection. It is reserving its precious space for something far more authentic, something that emanates directly from the soul, not from a place of desperate lack. The profound transformation culminates when she truly realizes she no longer needs to be sought out, to be chased, to be validated by external sources. She is the center, she is the fire, she is the revealing light itself, and when that inner light shines with its full intensity, those who cannot handle its brilliance will naturally step away, but those who come later, those truly aligned, will never approach her from a place of half-heartedness, because the woman who has bravely journeyed through her own profound silence no longer tolerates living a diminished, muted existence. She is no longer available for ordinary, superficial relationships, because she, herself, is no longer ordinary. And when the body, with its physical impulses, quiets, it is the magnificent soul that finally truly chooses. And an awakened soul, once it has tasted its true power, never again chooses what once wounded or diminished it. Then she rises, not merely as someone returning to the world she once knew, but as someone, I assure you, becoming the very essence of the world itself. Every step she takes is now consciously chosen, every decision carefully measured, not by the paralyzing fear of being alone, but by the profound, intrinsic value of her own exquisite company. The body that once yearned for external touch now pulses at an entirely new, subtler, deeper, and profoundly truer frequency. There is no longer any desperate rush to fill perceived emptiness, no lingering desire to squeeze herself into spaces far too small for her magnificent, newly expanded soul. Carl Jung wisely imparted that what we deny inevitably submits us, but what we courageously integrate truly transforms us. And this awakened woman has, at last, fully integrated her former absences. She has made what once felt like lack into a sacred home. She has lovingly transmuted silence into her personal altar. Yet there is something profound that few truly perceive about her. She is not, dear seeker, waiting for anyone to rescue her. Because the woman who has bravely journeyed through her own internal darkness, emerging on the other side, no longer needs saving. She has powerfully rescued herself, and that act of radical self-rescue, I assure you, changes absolutely everything. She can never, ever return to how things once were. What once felt like a desperate need is now a sovereign choice. What once was a compulsion is now profound discernment. She can love, yes, with all the expansiveness of her heart, but she no longer loves from a place of aching need, but from an overflowing, boundless abundance. And when that true love arrives, it will not come to complete her. No, it will come to simply, magnificently accompany her on her already whole journey. Her soul, my friends, is already exquisitely complete. This radiant new state awakens something profoundly essential within her, a clear sense of mission, of purpose, of absolute clarity. She understands with deep wisdom that her individual experience wasn't merely personal, it was powerfully symbolic, that her once silenced body represents all those countless women who were also subtly taught to depend on others, to distract themselves, to endlessly give themselves away, and now she feels an undeniable impulse to become a beacon of light, not to dictate a path, but to ignite the dormant fire within others, because only one who has intimately found herself in the deep, encompassing darkness can truly guide others not to fear its shadows, but to find their own internal radiance. Jung, with his vast understanding, would call this the magnificent manifestation of the self, that sacred moment when the soul no longer seeks to be accepted, but unequivocally demands to be fully expressed. Everything she lost along the arduous way, the old loves, the fragile, smaller versions of herself, the relationships where she painfully had to shrink to fit in, no longer carries the same sting. Now, every perceived loss resonates like a liberation. Every absence feels like a powerfully answered prayer, because the woman who courageously journeyed through the abstinence of the flesh has, in the process, discovered the profound nourishment of the soul, and that internal nourishment feeds her from such a deep place that nothing external will ever truly be enough unless it perfectly resonates with the immense wisdom and love that already lives vibrantly within her. So, she meticulously prepares herself, not to merely return to old, limiting roles, but to truly inhabit a new, expanded place in the world, a sacred space where her authentic presence is more than enough, where her voice carries immense weight and truth, where her very silence is a powerful, sacred declaration. And when her body experiences desire again, it will be by sacred choice, not by desperate emotional addiction. When true love finally knocks at her door, it will not find a needy woman. It will find a woman who is whole, complete, and utterly ready to meet it from a place of abundance. And until that auspicious moment arrives, she remains steady, poised not in abstinence, but in deep, reverent vigil, because now she knows, with every fibre of her being, yes, the body may be quiet, but it is her magnificent soul that is, at long last, truly speaking. There are silences, my dear friends, that seem cold and barren from the outside, yet within their depths they cradle potent, living embers. There are absences that, to the external world, may sound like irreparable loss, but within the fertile ground of one's own being, they sow the seeds of powerful new life. And there are women who, when they bravely withdraw from the demands of the world, do not extinguish their light. Instead, they ignite anew on an entirely different, higher plane of existence. When the body finally falls silent, it does not die. No, it transforms itself into an altar, a hallowed, sacred space where the soul finally finds the unwavering courage to speak its deepest truths. And everything that once seemed like a tragic lack of life now reveals itself as a divine presence, meticulously gestating a new, profound identity, clearer, rarer, and utterly whole. Nothing truly lived is ever lost, I assure you. Everything is powerfully transmuted. Desire, once a frantic urgency, now becomes a sovereign, conscious choice. Pain, once a raw, open wound, now becomes a deep, indelible scar of profound wisdom. The woman who bravely walks through the perceived abstinence of the flesh, with a clear and unwavering awareness, is not stepping away from love. No, she is profoundly learning to love from an entirely new place, a place where there is no longer ravenous hunger, but boundless, overflowing abundance. And in that quiet, magnificent abundance, she becomes truly untouchable, not because no one can physically reach her, but because no one can ever manipulate or diminish her again. Can you feel the subtle, yet powerful reflection of this profound path stirring inside yourself? That nameless nostalgia, that unsettling discomfort of no longer fitting precisely where you once felt comfortably at home, that inexplicable desire to retreat without knowing exactly why? This is not fragility, my dear friend. This is the soul's first, undeniable call. Perhaps this message, this very video, did not find you by mere accident. Perhaps it is a luminous mirror, reflecting something that has long pulsed deep within you, but had not yet been clearly named, articulated, brought into conscious light, and now that it has, something fundamental has undeniably shifted. If this journey, these profound insights have touched a long-forgotten part of who you are, I urge you, allow yourself to bravely continue. Do not, under any circumstances, extinguish the precious spark that has been lit within you. Share this powerful message with someone else, who may also feel her body has gone quiet, but does not yet fully comprehend why. Leave a comment, a heartfelt testimony, telling us how this truth has resonated with your deepest being. And if you wish to continue walking with us on this path of such profound depth and unflinching truth, I invite you, subscribe to this channel right here. For every word we share is a sacred seed. Every moment of silence is fertile, welcoming soil. And every video we present is a profound ritual. Because in the end, dear seeker, this is what truly remains. A woman who has profoundly learned to hear what her own soul whispers, even when the clamor of the world is too loud. And that divine whisper gently yet powerfully says, "You are not alone. You are awakening."